Queen Victoria gave us the tradition of the white wedding dress. The tradition that Prince Albert gave us that is well and truly alive today is the Christmas tree, because Christmas trees were used in his native Germany, and the Victorians were very into the concept of Christmas. They liked a good old Christmas party. So I thought I would talk in this section a little bit about the history of Christmas and other winter festivals in the UK, which actually goes all the way back to the Neolithic period. Christmas, as we know, is the celebration of the birth of Christ, as in Christ's Mass, and it takes place all over the world. And how a certain country celebrates that festival tells you a lot about those people, which is why I've chosen to talk about it. The first recorded Christmas celebration was in Rome on December the 25th, AD 336. Now, some people believe that when the Anglo-Saxons converted to Christianity, that they just took a pre-existing festival and renamed it Christmas. That's not entirely accurate. Actually, the English, although there wasn't a concept of England at that time, it was different kingdoms, but the English were late to the Christmas party, so to speak, although there had been other midwinter celebrations that were quite common before Christianity came to the UK, as we're about to hear. The tallest stone at Stonehenge suggests that December the 21st, the winter solstice, was very important to the Neolithic people, as the stone lines up with the sunrise on that day, as you can see beautifully pictured below. Whilst we can't entirely recreate a Neolithic celebration because it's before written records, we do know that they ate a lot of pork and beef, as well as dairy products, especially cheese and fermented milk, and they may have drunk barley beer and mead from pottery beakers, which were quite the fashionable item in the Neolithic period. Midwinter presents may have included daggers made of bronze, which had begun to replace flint and stone in making tools and weapons, hence this is known as the Bronze Age. So the custom of giving presents in winter goes back a long, long way. These were possibly imported from Europe, which was more advanced in working with the metal than Britain was at the time. Party wear for well-off Bronze Age revellers may have included gold necklaces and hair decorations and gold buttons on their clothes. One of their customs was to jump over log fires to encourage the sun to return. So I may be taking a light-hearted attitude towards winter festivals here, but there was a serious point. In the period of history where there was no such thing as any form of heating, and they couldn't protect themselves from the elements, winter killed a lot of people, so propitiating the gods around that time of year was seen as a pretty essential thing to try and do. They may also have sung songs and played bone flutes. So the concept of the Christmas carol also goes back a very, very long way. Roman celebrations in Britain. The Saturnalia, beginning on December the 17th, was 5 days of feasting celebrating midwinter. It honoured the Titan god Saturn, who was the god of plenty, and he was the god that you wanted to butter up during the winter months of little food. All the usual conventions of rank were overturned during Saturnalia. Slaves were served by their masters, and everyone wore the conical pileus or cap of liberty, which was presented to slaves when they were freed. So everyone was considered to be equal for those 5 days. And also, that's possibly where we get the tradition of the silly Christmas hat. Gambling with dice, which was usually illegal, was actually permitted during Saturnalia. People wore bright colours instead of the customary white, bright dyes being, of course, quite expensive, so that was your best clothing. There were public and domestic feasts. Again, people exchanged presents, especially sigillaria, which were small figures made of wax or pottery. They also gave satirical presents, in other words, they took the mickey, and they gave songs and poems. It was the only time of year that slaves got time off, and they were also allowed to criticise their masters. Soldiers were served by their officers, and that actually became a tradition in the British military right the way through to the 20th century, where officers would serve the enlisted men on Boxing Day. As well as the bread and beef the Romans commonly ate, they added foods that the Romans had brought to Britain, including figs, dates, pine nuts, snails, dormice, and garum, which was a pungent sauce made from fish. Instead of the everyday beer they drank, they would have drunk imported wine and other drinks blended with honey and spices, kind of like the predecessor to mulled wine. The medieval period, they really did Christmas in a big way. There were 12 days of Christmas from the 25th of December to January the 6th, which is known as Twelfth Night. The name Christmas, as in Christ's Mass, is first recorded in England in 1038. Medieval Christmas adopted the Roman customs of gift-giving and role-swapping between servants and masters, and also followed some traditions from the Scandinavian midwinter feast of Yule, such as the Yule log, which is not a chocolate thing from Marks and Spencer's. It was an actual log, which was kept burning throughout the season. Houses were decorated with evergreens. Not quite Christmas trees as we know them today, but this idea of the evergreen, of course, that really appeals in winter, because it's still alive and it's like becomes this symbol of hope, and that is very much what Christ was thought to represent. They feasted on richly decorated boars' heads and drank braggot, which was a really strong ale with honey and cinnamon laced with brandy. I might pass out unconscious just reading that because I'm a bit of a lightweight when it comes to drinking. At parties, a Lord of Misrule was appointed to oversee festivities, and actually Christopher Lee called his autobiography The Lord of Misrule. Little fact there. The Lord of Misrule could order some quite rough games to be played, including one called Hot Cockles, where a member of the party was blindfolded and had to guess who had slapped them from behind. So it was a great opportunity to slap people. If the slapped person guessed correctly, the person who had given the slap was the next victim. Religious devotion, of course, was also part of the celebrations, and there were, of course, masses because it's Christ's Mass. Kings wore their crowns and ceremonial attire at Christmas feasts. Actually, there's a lovely description of a medieval Christmas feast in the anonymous poem The Green Knight, as in Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, which describes Christmas at King Arthur's court, but is very much based on the contemporary Christmases of the poet. Henry II held Christmas crown wearings in 24 places during his 34-year reign. Tudor Christmases, also very big parties. Tudor Christmases also lasted for 12 days. One tradition was that on 12th night, a bean was baked into a cake. The person whose slice of cake contained the bean became king of the bean. If a woman got it, she chose the king, and everyone had to imitate him. So if he coughed, you coughed. If he got up from his chair, you got up from your chair. It must actually have been incredibly irritating for that person. Plays were popular over Christmas, such as Shakespeare's Twelfth Night, of course. Disguisings were also popular, not quite a masked ball, but dressing up, basically. Henry VIII wrote A Christmas Carol. He was actually quite a competent musician. He wrote a Christmas carol called Green Groweth the Holly. At his parties, his friends dressed as Robin Hood's merry men or as Moors, and you were meant to pretend not to recognise them. Elizabeth I loved to dance at Christmas and had a dancing chamber at Kenilworth Castle. A popular Christmas dance was known as the cushion dance. Men placed a cushion in front of a lady they wanted to dance with, and she was obliged to kiss the man and join the dance. Rich Tudors loved sugar, which was a very expensive commodity. In fact, having a lot of sugary dishes was the equivalent to completely covering your home in gold. They sweetened their wine and also held Christmas sugar banquets, which incorporated sugar models of castles, dragons and holly. Some goblets were made of sugar, so you drank the drink and then ate the goblet. Elizabeth I's teeth turned black due to her sugar consumption. Presents were given on New Year's Day at that period in history, and the Queen expected to be given expensive gifts, and she actually recorded the value of the gifts she received. She famously gave her father and her stepmother, Catherine Parr, translations she had done herself for New Year when she was a little girl. Christmas during the Commonwealth of England, what can I say? Cromwell banned it. And he banned a lot of things and he did a lot of harsh things, but when he banned Christmas, that was a step too far and there were pro-Christmas riots. Charles II reinstated Christmas and is now known as the Party King. Victorian Christmases. Actually fairly close to the way we celebrate Christmas today, if you do celebrate Christmas today. During the Victorian period, Christmas became a family festival. It's more of a domestic thing than a public thing and a bit less raucous. Queen Victoria and especially Prince Albert, along with their children, contributed towards changes in tradition which influence how we celebrate Christmas today. Albert introduced Christmas trees to the United Kingdom in 1840 as they had been part of Christmas celebrations in his native Germany, and as we said before, the royal family in this period were meant to be like a template for domestic life. So Prince Albert introduces the Christmas tree, and there's one in Buckingham Palace, and suddenly everybody's got to have one. They became very popular and were decorated with lights and presents, and now the presents were given on Christmas Day instead of New Year's Day. Victorian children got modest presents like oranges, sweets, and nuts, unless they were wealthier, and they might get a toy that was sort of tied to the new technology, like a model train. Christmas box tips to servants and tradesmen, little presents and money that you made up for them, were given on the 26th of December, the day after Christmas, which became known as Boxing Day in the UK. Christmas cards, Christmas crackers, eating turkey instead of goose, and Christmas pudding all originated with the Victorians. Santa Claus, who had started his gift-giving career in America, first came to the UK in the 1870s. Most Victorian families went to church at Christmas, and some of the most famous Christmas carols were written in this period, including Good King Wenceslas, Once in Royal David City, and O Come All Ye Faithful. After the publication of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol in 1843, a tradition began of affluent individuals giving gifts to poorer families, and giving gifts to charity or donations to charity at Christmas is still a tradition for some people today. So now you've heard about Christmas in the UK throughout the ages, you can decide which kind of Christmas party you would most like to attend.